Good evening, Wakefield, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for Monday, June 10th, 2024. I'm Vice Chair Ed Dombrowski, sitting in this evening for Chairman Michael McLean, who cannot be here for personal reasons tonight. I'll call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. and ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for that. I see that we have in attendance the other 6 councilors. Again, Councilor McLean not able to be here this evening. With that, we'll move on to public engagement, which is item number 4 of the agenda. I believe, Mr. Mayo, we have 2 in-studio individuals, correct?
Yes, we do. Yes, correct.
And the first I'll call up will be Mr. John Chrisley. Just a reminder for everyone in studio and those watching at home, public engagement is limited to 3 minutes in duration. Generally, there's not back and forth, but instead, this is an opportunity for you to present to the council and to give some thought to your comments.
Okay.
And any further follow-up, we can have it at a later meeting. So with that, if you could identify yourself with your name and address, please.
Good evening. John Chrisley. I live at 19 Humphrey Street. I'm a member of the Safe Streets Wakefield group here in town. And on the agenda tonight, I know you're going to be discussing some of the design elements for North Ave. And I've presented it at previous meetings. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of key design elements. First, want to thank the town for getting, the construction is underway on North Ave. The new wider sidewalk is, I think, is already showing progress. You see more people out there walking, a lot more engagement, on the road. And so the wider sidewalk is, I think, showing some success early on. And I want to speak particularly about the northbound bike lane and the flex posts. I think I would strongly encourage the council to, reaffirm the addition of the protected bike lane, which are the flexible posts that are slated to be removable by the Public Works Department. The flex posts are a form of protection. They provide vertical delineation for both drivers and for cyclists about where they should be riding. And they're also deterrent to motor vehicle operators who may be texting on their phone or otherwise engaging in distracted driving. We'd rather have the edge of the cars hit the flexible posts than a person on a bike. I think that's primarily their key benefit. And I think with those additions, it'll be a great component of the whole road redesign for North Ave. So I just wanted to encourage the council to adopt that part of the design that Bill Renault has worked so hard on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chrisley. Appreciate it. Next in studio, I believe we have Mr. Ted Dooling. So again, if you could just identify yourself and your address. Thank you.
Yeah, Ted Dooling, also officially George Dooling. I go by Ted. 11 Muriel Ave. I also want to concur that the improvements are fantastic on North Ave. It's a pleasure and a breath of fresh air to see. I'm timing myself. I'm in favor of the what I call removable flex posts as well. So I just came from a course in driver retraining. I teach for the National Safety Council. And our class is full of repeat offenders, speeders, people that are impaired, lane violators, on and on. Every class is full. We talk about something called intentional blindness. And that's when a driver is either on a cell phone, hands-free, or holding the phone. And what the studies say is 40% of what's in front of them they don't see when they're on the phone, scientific studies. So one of the things they don't see are small things like cyclists. They have this tunnel vision where they see things ahead, but they're focusing on the phone call. There's a lot of distracted drivers out there. So I'm here to speak for the young families that'll be riding in those bike lanes, and they can have complete faith in the safety of them. They feel that what you put in place, if it's there, it's safe to be used. And without those removable flex posts, I don't consider it safe. I'd be reluctant because there's too many spots where a driver heading north would want to turn left, and a car behind them might not be patient enough to wait and might sneak onto that space where the cyclist is. If they're distracted, they may not look in the rearview mirror and see the cyclist coming along. It's also beneficial for the drivers because it'll keep the cyclists that might want to pass another cyclist from crossing over into the street, which is a common thing. Cyclists break rules too. And this is a nice safety barrier. I can't imagine going without it when you have the opportunity to put it in there. And it will get used. It'll get used a lot, probably right from the get-go, because it's such a great asset to have. And again, I think people are just fully trusting in the system you put in place. And without those flex posts, I don't think it's safe enough. I see the people that come in my class, and I hear the stories every day, and they're just horrific. You have an opportunity to make it safe and prevent something bad from happening. If they don't go in there, I think it's inevitable that at some point a car is going to cross into a cyclist lane, or a cyclist is going to cross into where a car is, and it may be a frequent occurrence. This gives you an opportunity to reduce that possibility. It won't eliminate it, but it'll certainly make it considerably safer for all the people that are going to go out and use it. So, again, it was well done. I'm really impressed with it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dooling, for your comments. Appreciate it.
You were perfect. You didn't need the alarm.
And good evening, Madam Clerk, online. Do we have anyone online this evening for public engagements?
No, the only other one is the one from Vincent DeSessa, who
Yes.
sent in a public participation form but didn't want to speak.
Okay, and I have that here, so I'll just read it aloud for my colleagues and for the public. This is from Vincent DeSessa of 37 Green Street, and he writes, I'm concerned about what will be the apparent width of the new bicycle lane on North Avenue. It appears that it will be too restrictive. This is even before the installation of the flex barrier, much narrower than the prior marked lane. I would like to hear further discussion about this during the June 10th meeting. All right, so with that, it seems we've covered public engagement for this evening, so we'll move next on to item number 5, which is our presentation portion of the meeting. And our first presentation is the Youth Council updates, and I would invite up Chair Ali Atui and Mr. Collins, the advisor to the Youth Council. And good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I know you have a PowerPoint presentation, so once you're set up, you're good to go.
All right, thank you.
And for those watching, the Youth Council was created within the last couple of years, and this is an opportunity for the community to understand all of the various projects and initiatives that the Youth Council has been working on over the course of the last year. We also have it on the screen here as well for you if it's helpful that way.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I am the chair, Ali Atwi, and this is Mr. Collins, who is serving as our civic engagement advisor to the Youth Council. And I'm very excited to present to you all kind of what we've been doing over this past term. We've had a very busy term, and I'm very proud to say to tell all the interesting work that we've been able to accomplish. So if we can move to the next slide. Oh, we have the clicker. Thank you. All right, so to introduce, just to give an overview of what the Youth Council is for those that may not be familiar. So we're an organization of Wakefield youth aged 13 to 18 that work to empower youth voices in the town through the promotion of various initiatives, as well as advancing certain policy through local government with this platform. And our members learn the process to effectively advocate, involve themselves in town issues, implement different projects that benefit the general youth population of the town, as well as other different components that we try to pursue. And during this term, we consisted of 11 voting high school members and 3 voting middle school members, as well as 1 non-voting alternate. As for our adult advisors, Catherine Dinger served as our adult advisor for the majority of this term before departing last month, and Mr. Collins served as our new civic engagement advisor. So as for our organization in action, just a general overview of that. To manage our different initiatives and policy goals, we break the Youth Council down into different subgroups. The primary one is the Communications and Outreach Subcommittee, which handles all our messaging and public outreach through our Instagram and Facebook pages, as well as the facilitation of certain initiative discussions. We've also worked to create different working groups to focus on different components. As we did for the grant project, we created our finance working group to handle the grant project, as well as the potential budget that we were able to execute with that. And just furthermore, we assign liaisons for all of our members, and this is a key point of collaboration and facilitation of discussion between the Youth Council and other boards, commissions, and organizations. And just to highlight some key ones that have been especially relevant as we've worked. The School Committee, BB Library, Council on Aging, Safe Streets, Human Rights Commission, as well as many other boards in addition to the Town Council. And this is just a photo of us at our kickoff meeting back in September. So very nice to see the engagement that this drives forward for our youth in the town. So now I'm going to get into some of the specific initiatives that we've been able to accomplish over this past term. So one of the foremost of these initiatives was the Intergenerational Tree Project, which was spearheaded by Vanessa Westlake, who chaired the finance working group. So she worked to write a Massachusetts Cultural Council grant to receive the funding for this project. And so the general basis of this project was to create a multi-generational art project that was designed to bring senior citizens as well as the youth community together to create a mural and to be displayed in public spaces throughout Wakefield, following a dialogue that just to benefit the connection between the youth and senior community of Wakefield. And once approved, this project was held at the Senior Center on April 3rd and was promoted through our network. So for the outcome of this event, we saw a turnout of over 60 youth and seniors of Wakefield, showing that the success that it was able to gather from the community. The art created during the event allowed the community to engage in dialogue and connect the different generations, which was the goal of this event as a whole. And so the final art project is currently being worked on by a WMHS art student using the leaves decorated during the event, hence the name, the tree project. And once complete, the final tree will travel around different public spaces in Wakefield. Right now, that is still in the works, and we are hoping to hopefully have it at the BB Library once it's completed. So now, this was a much larger initiative that we were able to, that we're still pursuing actually, which was school culture and support. So we first started this discussion based on the results of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, in which we kind of saw numerous concerning statistics that we largely connected to school culture in a wider sense. I know that the term kind of has a loose definition, so it really does connect to a wide array of different facets of our school community. And then we had an extended discussion, which I found very powerful, very insightful into the personal and outcomes that different students have dealt with in the school community, kind of their different experiences, detailing the central role that school culture has played in many issues ranging from bullying to depression to general school engagement, as well as how we might be able to take action on it as the Youth Council. And so what this led to was we kind of split it into two separate components. So the first component was the Galvin Middle School action that we took. So Mr. Collins primarily took the lead in formulating a survey based on our discussion and additional guidance from the Youth Council and the Galvin Positive School Culture team that he works a part of. And this survey garnered much response, and its results were included in the professional development that was led by Mr. Collins, and its results truly demonstrated the need for more consideration for school culture. So I did include some statistics from the survey that I can talk a little bit more about, but before I do, Mr. Collins, would you like to say anything on the survey as a whole, or anything with the Galvin school culture?
Yeah, I think for me it was just really powerful hearing all of the youth voices and kind of their need for certain supports and certain things. And I think just being at the Galvin Middle School for 6 years, I think myself and all my colleagues definitely want to do, all of the things we can do to support the youth, but sometimes we don't know what to do or the right thing to do or what youth really need. So I think in my role as serving as the advisor for Youth Council, but also connecting that back to the schools, it was really beneficial to kind of amplify some of the voices and incorporate that into some of the professional development that we did this year. And I was able to have a small little panel of youth to kind of bring in some of those voices and kind of what I perceive to be the most valuable for staff to hear, because that's ultimately what we're there for.
Yeah, and it was really interesting hearing that teacher perspective as well, because oftentimes we focus on school culture as focusing on the students, but the teachers play a very instrumental role in that, and seeing how they can advocate better for their students, and that was a major takeaway from this. And kind of like specifically talking about the survey, some things that we were able to point out was that students a lot of the time worry about grades, and that interferes with their enjoyment of school. That behavioral issues were noted by many students, and it was actually interesting to see students advocating for more strict engagement of rules. I thought that was an interesting takeaway from that. But at the same time, they want to be more involved in the rulemaking process to sort of shape it in a way that's more effective to actually changing the rules to make them more widely accepted. Over 70% of the students stated that they lacked this decision-making process, as well as there was a sizable minority of students, roughly 30 to 40% of students, that consistently in the various questions that we provided with them, who stated that they do not feel respected by other students, that they oftentimes see students made fun of, and at the same time do not necessarily feel compelled to stop bullying when they see it, due to the various social pressures that are associated with that. And another thing that was really interesting to see was, and this was more in the open response section of the survey, was the transformation of bullying as a whole, changing it from the way that we're often taught to address bullying, kind of like the physical part of it, or even like the very visible verbal part of it. But right now we've been seeing it turn into more implicit, more subtle ways that can still make a very painful impact on students, but are less perceptible to teachers and administration. So that was really interesting. But also we were able to find positives as well. Like many students still see teachers as beneficial resources when they're upset, breaking rules, or are being bullied at the same time. So the role of teachers cannot be understated in the school community. So that was definitely beneficial to see. And for the other part of this school culture was the action that we're taking at the WMHS. So myself and Catherine, we first met with the school adjustment counselors to better understand the school support system at the high school. And we coupled this with the previous youth council discussion, and we saw a lot of areas for increased awareness, primarily through the tiered system that exists at the high school, which many of us did not previously know about, talking about how guidance counselors are the initiating point for a lot of support discussions, but many students, and this was amplified during our discussion as well, many students do not feel necessarily that they have a connection with their guidance counselors, or they may feel intimidated to actually initiate that connection with their guidance counselors. So from there, we had a discussion with the guidance director, David Robinson, and a plan is currently in motion to increase student awareness and accessing the various facets of the school support system, especially starting with the guidance counselors, because once a meeting with the guidance counselors can occur, we see the wide breadth of the school support resources being able to be accessed by the youth. And so right now we are working on making an infographic and executing an awareness campaign for the start of the school year, beginning with the 9th grade orientation, and then making a video to showcase all of this and make the guidance counselors appear more accessible, primarily from the student standpoint, showcasing that so that way students feel more comfortable accessing that, which altogether promotes a more positive school culture. And following that, we engaged with the civic action projects, which I'm sure many of you have received emails from various students talking about this. So the civic action projects are these government mandated projects completed by both 8th and 11th grade students to increase youth-driven civic changes. However, at the beginning of this term, we pointed out the problem that many students run into, that they don't necessarily have the resources to see these issues, even when they're passionate about them, to come to fruition due to the obstacles that they might face. Therefore, the Youth Council in this term has been serving as a resource to bridge the divide between students and actual action, and assist individual students with making their civic action projects more likely to be implemented. And so at our last meeting, seeing this actually being realized, we are working with a student who reached out to us talking about making school sports at the WMHS more affordable, and we had a long discussion about how kind of just because athletic fees might be less expensive, and even though oftentimes they are very expensive for families that are unable to afford them, the associated costs of participating in school sports might prove too big an obstacle for some students to support without a financial burden for their family. So that's kind of seeing the civic action projects being aided by the youth council. Another thing that we focused on was financial literacy, which I know has been a major focus for many individuals in the community. So after a discussion initiated by a separate project of Ahmed Othman, the Youth Council did discuss the merits of financial literacy and how it affects us as young members of society who will soon assume much more influence over our own financial statuses, talking about different things like student loan debt, different things talking about credit cards, how to do your taxes, and different things that make us. And we believe that with a financial literacy course, and we discussed this thoroughly, that through such course we would be able to serve as more educated and well-equipped and secure individuals of society to protect ourselves and truly create the best future for ourselves financially with the best resources that we have. And we voted in favor of recommending adding this financial literacy course to the state curriculum, as it would be beneficial to Wakefield students and students across Massachusetts. And I drafted and sent a letter to Senator Jason Lewis, the chairperson of the Joint Committee on Education, to advance this cause. So this was the open mic night was another event that we successfully pursued, which Sophia Panaghetti initiated this project through her liaison to the Recreation Department, and I worked with her to execute it. We did this to both highlight the Albion Cultural Exchange, which is a great location to provide a fun experience for attendees. We also set up a hot chocolate bar, which was very fun to see. We had a lot of performers come, and it was generally a great opportunity for community engagement, which was definitely a highlight from this term. As well as the Farmers Market Bike Ballet that we were able to pursue this past summer, led by Safe Streets Working Group Liaison Juliana Spalding, in which the bike ballet was set up at the Farmers Market every Saturday. The ballet was consistently staffed by both members of the Youth Council, Youth Action Team, members of Safe Streets, and other members of the community, which was definitely great to see, as it was widely used by a lot of community members, as it provided a safe method to safely store their method of transportation while they enjoyed the farmers market. And we're currently looking at different options to re-implement this during the summer. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And beyond Wakefield, this was one of the more interesting parts that we've been able to do during this term. This was very interesting because we were actually able to engage with other towns to sort of assist them in their own youth council endeavors. We met with Malden, Massachusetts, with their youth civic engagement council there to discuss. They wanted our input on how we have been able to function as the youth council, discuss our strategies as a youth government organization impacting local government, because they were at the time looking to emulate the youth council in order to implement their own youth council in Malden on the basis of the youth council, and we assisted them through various points of insight, such as our liaison roles, how we engage with the different town boards, and how we organize our initiatives and policy goals. So that was definitely interesting to see. And we also had a meeting, with a youth group in Wakefield, England, actually, to cooperate with them, talking about transatlantic cooperation, which was definitely a very interesting opportunity for a lot of our members to see that. So definitely great to consider. And just to highlight some other youth council initiatives, the Snow Angel shoveling program returned this year for the third winter. Despite minimal snow this winter, it was still a success. We definitely did have some snowier days. Nathaniel Chines, who is another youth council member, led a project to bring back Recycling Club at the Galvin and increase recycling methods at the school as well, which was great to see that engagement with youth council liaisons. Youth council member Annabeth Gorel has been involved with the BB Library and gaining data about library usage and program benefits, which was also great to see. And we have continuously worked with the Wakefield Human Rights Commission to volunteer at many of their events and promote their information as well. So with that, do any of you have any questions that we could answer?
So I'll just remind everyone that if you could just wait to be recognized, if you have a comment or a question for the Youth Council, we can just take them one at a time. So if anyone has any feedback. First off, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for all the work you in the council have done. And thank you also, Mr. Collins, for what you've been able to do as well. And Ms. Dinger, obviously, before as well, for her work. I'll open up to any comments or questions if anyone has. Councilor Shines.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the update. And I will say, as someone who was the town council's liaison to the youth council for a couple of years, and have seen, Ali and other members of the youth council really sort of grow up through the youth council. Yeah. It's one of the things that I really I think distinguishes us as a community is the fact that we have such a strong and vibrant youth council. And every time I see your meetings, I'm always just inspired by the level of discussion, the level of engagement, and just the amazing creativity that goes into some of these projects. The intergenerational tree one is a great example where, it's one part of this work that you've done to kind of engage with different parts of the community in a really positive and thoughtful way. And I just am so excited to see it happen. I'm also excited about the fact that it feels like this year there's been probably more engagement at the school level. And Mr. Collins, I really commend you for being a part of that as well. I think that's been another great addition to the Youth Council this year, is your presence and the way that you're able to kind of connect in a very direct and real way to the Youth Council. I know we have kind of appointments coming up, which is great, but I would also say, I know we'll have appointments next year and potentially in the fall as well if we have any positions that aren't filled. Encourage everyone to apply for this who has any interest. I again have just been so impressed with everyone who's gone through it, and to see again, kind of the way that, folks have sort of grown in there, and the way that you guys do a great job of mentoring some of the younger members of the Youth Council has been really gratifying. So thank you for everything that you do, and really exciting work this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Shines. Anyone else comments or questions?
So,
Councilor Butt.
so just echoing what Councilor Chine said, a great job by Youth Council. I'm always impressed when Malden wants to copy us, so you might have to call Mayor Gary and tell him how great our Youth Council is. So just one feedback, Mr. Collins, and I feel like I do this every year, the emails that I get from your students are amazing. I think I've responded to 4. I think I have 3 more to respond to. They are so great. If we could not get them in June, it would be even better, because then we can actually work with them. So they actually, the emails that I got were about biking in town. So I sent them to the Safe Street Working Group, and they had some questions or ideas for DPW that I sent that way. If there's any way we can get them, before April vacation, then we can actually work with the students. And I know I've said this before, so
No, it's really great. Every year we try to, and especially now having the Youth Council involved, that's been really great. And going into next year, I think we'll consider that a little bit more too, about even just the way I know that there's a lot of emails that get sent as well. So we always are looking at ways to.
The letters are so impressive. They really come at a policy problem and come with the solution and come with personal stories. And so, next year I'd love for them to come and provide comment on their suggestions, right? So if we can just do that before summer vacation starts, I would love it. But they're so impressive, every single inquiry. And like I said, I'm halfway through responding, so I'll get to
I know there could be a lot.
Yeah.
Thank
I know,
you.
I think it's the alphabetical.
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking. But.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Butt. Anyone else? Councilor Butt.
I'll chime in as well. I have 2 8th graders now, so I've had, I unlike you, I have the person at home prompting me, have you responded yet? Have you responded yet? So I feel like I've gotten all my answers out, but it was amazing more that they touched on every issue that John and I addressed in the, during the campaign, but also just ones you hadn't thought of, skate park, and just interesting things that would never come to sort of within my vision, that I'm like, oh, that is a good point, and that's an interesting take. I think that's what you want out of the Youth Council is, none of us are youths here, so we actually can't have that vision as to what's important and what's vital for that next generation of Wakefield resident, and it's been great getting feedback on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Acting Chair Dombrowski. I appreciate the presentation. My question was, I applaud the financial literacy course. Did you get a response back from the senator? Because I saw the letter was dated February.
No, we did not get a response back from the senator, and I understand that this was one of the things that was swept kind of to the side during, I believe, this term of the Massachusetts legislature. So we're hoping to continue to reaffirm this, and I know that actually this was another major topic of the Civic Action Projects as well. I had many peers in my classes try to pursue this as well, because I know that this is a topic that is very relevant to the students of Massachusetts and Wakefield, of course. But I think that definitely pursuing this again, because even though it might not be the most apparent issue for the legislature right now, I definitely think that it's one that they should consider, just because of the implications that it can have for all of our successes, really, because the more financially literate we are, the more likely we are able to make the right decisions that really bolster our future. So, yeah.
I just spent the weekend with my two 30-year-old children, and I'm still giving them financial literacy advice. And we had our own little course, but so I really applaud that effort. Thank you.
Councilor Carney.
I was just impressed with your presentation and the amount of detail that you worked in. Adults your age, I think it's an impressive thing to do. I wish you luck in the future and hope you keep on doing the good work.
Thank you.
The best of the best.
I think everyone has said it. You have really done a great job this past year, so thank you for your leadership, for one, and thank you for all of the efforts of so many committed students, our next generation within our community. It's great to see that, indeed. And again, thank you, Mr. Collins, for your leadership. So with that, thank you, Mr. Atui and Mr. Collins, for being here tonight. The presentation is online if anyone wants to see it on our website, certainly, and we'll obviously have this meeting available as well for anyone who may have missed it tonight to watch it at their pleasure. So again, thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Question, I don't think it's for them. It's more, do we have a replacement in town for?
There will be one coming, yes.
Okay.
Thank you again. We're going to jump around a little bit on the agenda. So we're going to stick under item 5, but we're going to go to 5F because I see Mr. McGrail is here, and from a timing perspective, we're going to jump to the Friendly 40B update from Mr. McGrail. Good evening. If you could just identify yourself.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail, with offices at 607 North Avenue in Wakefield. Thank you.
Welcome.
The council might remember that we were here not too long ago regarding the possible friendly 40B, as we termed it, at 484 and 504 Salem Street. And it was agreed at that meeting that we would move forward with due diligence items on this, so that both parties could, after the due diligence, make a determination if it would be appropriate and beneficial for both parties to move forward with a friendly 40B process for the properties at 484 and 504 Salem Street. Since that meeting, there was an initial step that had to be made, and I did that through Mr. Renault, the town engineer, to reach out to the Department of Transportation to see if there would be any state involvement because of the intersection proximity to Route 128, and was determined that there would not be. So we are now ready to formally move forward with our due diligence process, which will include, as I itemized in my letter, a traffic study, preparation of preliminary architectural designs and context massing plan to take a look at what the project would look like from various locations, meetings with the Department of Public Works Engineering Department on utilities, drainage components of the project, delineation of the wetlands with the Conservation Commission. That will be a formal filing with the Conservation Commission, which is pretty standard, to make sure that we all understand the wetlands and we're on the same page on what the wetlands lines are on the property. And then also meetings with the Community and Economic Development Director, Erica Kinderin, Senior Town Planner, Samantha Elliott, to look at the local initiative regulations and guidelines, so that could be presented to your council so everybody has a full understanding of that process. So my client is ready to move forward on that, expend some substantial sums of money to do that. And we had talked about the possibility of the council designating a member to go through that process with us, so that when we report back, your council designee member will have participated in all of these processes that I've laid out. so that you will actually have a representative that can report back to you directly and not just hear from us. So that our request is for the council to designate a member to work through that process with us. And again, as we said, these items that I've laid out, these are not limiting in any way. So, and I stated that in my letter. So as this process evolves, there might be other things that your designee member requests, which we would be open to, or once it comes back to your whole council, there might be other councilors or the whole council that would want something else looked at. But this gets us started and tries to move the process. And as we stated back when we came, there's no commitment to this until we get through that process and we all evaluate and see where we stand. And maybe at that point we move forward, or we both say, you know, this was a great process, but it's not going to work for either one of the parties or both of the parties. Hopefully it will.
So, Mr. McGrail, you've laid out the steps here, the action items, and you mentioned about the council designee. Can you help the public and this council understand what kind of timeline you're projecting or looking at this point?
The due diligence process?
Right.
I would say we've already got a traffic study ready to go to be reviewed by the Traffic Advisory Committee. We didn't want to submit that until we had a designee so they could look at it and participate in that. We've already have an architect retained who's working on this. I would think the whole due diligence process could be probably 3 or 4 months. I don't think it will take that long. Summer might slow it down a little bit.
And at what, just to clarify before I open up to questions and comments, and at what point in the process are you suggesting that a town council designee be involved?
Now.
Now, forthwith?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So,
Because when we go to the Traffic Advisory Committee, for example, with our traffic study, then your designated member, you know, I would think would want to participate that and perhaps ask questions or maybe ask us to, you know, enhance the traffic study a little bit. However, we just would like that, but, you know, the way the friendly 40B process is designed is that the owner is working with the town, and we would like to try to work with you from day one, so you're fully informed of the process.
great. So with that, I'll open up to any questions or comments of the council. Okay, seeing none for right now, I'll take vice chair's prerogatives as pitching for chair, and I'll say that I expect on our next meeting agenda, we would have a vote for this town council designee if it pleases this body to do so. So I'll make a note for the chair, so he'll know that for next time. All right, great. While we have you, Mr. McGrail, I realize that the 4th of July is coming up, and that means we have the best parade in America, and we have a viewing stand that has a viewing of a not so great building across from the AmeriCal. Could you provide the public in this council an update as to where things
Sure.
stand with your client on that project?
I can. Just bear with me so I can give you an accurate update. Okay. So as you're aware, that project has been permitted with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Currently, interior demolition is taking place. That should be wrapped up within a week, the final cleanup on that. So when you look at the building now, it doesn't look like anything is happening there, but it all is inside the building. Everything is staged in the rear of the building purposely, not to cause disruption on Main Street. So the dumpsters are in the back of the building in all entrance, and the demo work takes place in the back of the building. Once that is done, which it basically is, a structural engineer, because you might recall there was a recent fire in the building. So a structural engineer has been hired. They are going to go in and analyze the structure of the building, especially as it relates to the construction of the parking garage, which is going to take place underneath the building, to determine what portions of the building can remain and what portions will have to be raised and reconstructed as part of the project. Once that is complete, then our architect, Phoenix Architects, will prepare the construction documents based on what the structural engineer states. The total time frame for that with the structural engineer and the architect with the construction plans is approximately 4 months for that process. Once those construction plans are completed, then we'll be in a position to apply for a building permit, and construction will commence. Once construction commences, I've been informed it's approximately 18 months from start to finish.
Okay, so as far as what people can be expecting to see then, in the coming weeks, it sounds like it'll continue to be rear access activity, so there
Correct.
won't be any.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna see a lot there until, I would say at this point, the fall. Because the 4-month period for the structural engineer work, and then, to put the architectural construction document plans together is a process. That's a very detailed process. The architect works with the structural engineer to draw those plans.
And just to remind the public that's watching, your clients had been here before, the architect had been here, there had been drawings, renderings. So the expectation would be that once the structural engineer determines how to make those drawings work on that site, what people have seen before is what they would expect to see as the end product.
Yes,
That's still the
so
plan.
that's a very good point. So the plans that you've seen, the plans that are always presented to the Board of Appeals, they're renderings, they're not detailed plans as far as construction is concerned, but the Board of Appeals always puts a condition on that what you've showed us is what we're gonna get. So they actually have a condition that our architect and Site Civil have to actually certify when they apply for the building permit that the plans that are, the construction plans match the plans that were approved by the Board of Appeals. But the construction drawings deal with a lot of the calculations, the loads, the beams, and stuff that I don't fully understand, but they're a lot more detailed. And until somebody has all of their approvals and they're ready to move forward, they never do the constructual drawings because they're much too expensive to do without knowing what direction a project is going to go. So it's a natural process. This was hindered a little bit because of the fire that took place in the building and slowed it down a little bit.
Great. With that, I'll open up to any questions or comments of councilors. Councilor Carney.
Brian, my recollection is that there's two different structures there. Part of it, the front is wood, and the rear, isn't there a concrete block?
It's like a cinder block, yeah.
Cinder block.
Yeah.
And you're gonna try to make that whole and use both?
Yeah, we're going
portions?
to try to reuse the building because the cinder block, Councilor County, will be where the parking garage is going to be.
So that might come down.
It could come down and be reconstructed exactly where it is, or it might be reused. And that's part of what the structural engineer will tell us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions or comments? No. I would say if not, I think I speak for the council and the community. The message to the owners is that this has been a long overdue project. So anything and everything that can be done to expedite it, I think would show a tremendous amount of goodwill to the community that's waited very long for this.
Yes, understood. And we have, I have no problem as we move forward here to come with my client and with the project superintendent to continually give updates to the council if that would be helpful.
I think that would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I won't speak for everyone, but I'll speak for myself. I think
Maybe
that'd be
we get
incredibly
through the
helpful.
summer and then we
Right.
would,
In the fall in earnest, when it sounds like there's going to be
Yep.
more activity, I think regular updates. would be
and
quite
I'll pass
helpful.
the message on timing being important.
Please do. Thank you. Yes, Councilor
Fill
Butler.
me in again on where are we? This is the former Molise, right, obviously?
Yes.
And that's that, so, and I don't see anything in the ZBA. Just when was it presented before the ZBA?
Oh, God, I don't have the permit in front of me,
Okay.
Council Butler, so, I would be guessing, but I would say within the past year, approximately.
Okay. Well, I'll dig it up.
Thank you, Mr. Ravel. on that.
I can send copies of the ZBA decision through the town administrator if that would be helpful.
Sure.
That-
Or maybe just, I mean, I don't know if the others care. You could just send
Okay.
it to my email.
That's fine, I can send them through Steve.
And Mr. McGraw, while we have you, before we let you go, if we'll just jump next to item 6, donations. 6A is 200 Quantapowhat owner LLC. If you could
Great, if I could have
address that.
Marissa Marrow, Melissa Gallo, join me.
Hi, good evening and welcome.
I'm Marissa Gallo, representing Cabot, and Forbes.
Thank you.
Marissa is a senior project manager with Cabot, and Forbes. So we're before you tonight. As you know, I corresponded with your council last week regarding 400 Quantapowhat Parkway on behalf of 200 Quantapowhat owner LLC, of which Cabot, and Forbes is a principal and involved in. And Marissa is here on behalf of the ownership entity. This relates to the construction of the multifamily development and restaurant project at 200-400 Quantipower Parkway. The project was approved by the Board of Appeals by a decision filed with the town clerk. In this case, it was August of 2022. I'm sure your council is aware that the project is well underway and really proceeding in fast and diligent fashion. We're here tonight because as part of our approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals put conditions on the special permit. There were some specific conditions that I'm going to go through that evolved from correspondence by the Board of Appeals and discussions with the Wakefield Traffic Advisory Committee and the Department of Public Works. There'll be other conditions for this project that will be coming to you at a later date as the project construction proceeds that deal with open space commitments, public access. That is not what we're here to discuss for tonight because all of them through the zoning board decision have various timelines. These ones we're going to talk about tonight have timelines that are somewhat of the essence that we want to proceed and get these done to be in compliance with our special permit. What these conditions that we're discussing tonight involve financial contributions to the town of Wakefield, either in the form of work to be performed or actual cash contributions. And the only way that they can move forward with the town pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 4453A, is, as you're aware, I'm sure they have to be accepted as a gift. The first condition is work that is going to be done on Quantipower Parkway. Independent from our project, the town was planning on some significant improvements to Quantipower Parkway. That the timing of this was pretty good in relation to our project. Because of our impacts, we were asked to perform that work as part of our project instead of the town paying for it. That work is determined by the town engineer, Mr. Renault, and our client working together. It was determined that that work has an approximate value of $1,750,000. So the first contribution would be a contribution to the town of Wakefield to perform the work from the project that has been spec'd by the town of Wakefield through the engineering department on Quantipower Parkway, significant improvements at Quantipower Parkway that my client will do. It was also contemplated by the Board of Appeals that if we didn't do the work, that we would make the financial contribution of $1.75 million instead of doing the work. We've opted to do the work, and Mr. Renault is in the process of finalizing the permitting for that work, which is going to get underway pretty quickly. So that's the first condition put on by the Zoning Board of Appeals that we would like you to accept. The second condition relates to a financial contribution in the amount of $600,000 to the town towards future intersection and roadway mitigation of impacts just generated through growth in the town. This would be spent at your discretion, but it was a figure that was derived with the Traffic Advisory Committee as a recommendation and with the town engineer, and my client agreed to that. It's probably that a lot of this work would go in the area of the project and it would benefit the project, so my client was fine with making this contribution. Made sense. The next contribution is for the amount of $1,300,000, and that will go towards the water quality improvements to Lake Quantipower through the so-called Main Street project or other similar water quality enhancement projects identified by the town of Wakefield Clean Lake Committee and authorized by the town. This money contribution was discussed, quite frankly, with the Friends of Lake Quantipower, who were very participatory in this project with a common goal of helping clean the lake. And this project that will go to the Main Street project will have direct impacts on Lake Quantipower from a water quality standpoint. It's a significant contribution that I think the community is going to see benefits as a whole for the water quality. And this does not even include the water quality improvements on the site itself. So through the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, there are numerous conditions on this project that the water quality coming off of that site going into the lake is going to have dramatic improvement compared to what happens today. And this $1.3 million is totally independent on that, and this will be spent on mitigation on the Main Street side of the lake for a lot of the neighborhoods that flow into the lake, and will mitigate the runoff and treat the runoff before it goes into the lake. So that's 1.3 million. And then the final condition of the Zoning Board of Appeals is that the applicant make a contribution to the town in the amount of $225,880 for the inflow infiltration fund to do work around town with the sewers to prevent groundwater from infiltrating into the sewer system, which is a benefit to the town as a whole. So the total value of the contributions as conditioned by the Zoning Board of Appeals is approximately $3,875,000. And we would respectfully request that your council accept those pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 4453A. My client is in a position that the financial components of this, that they are ready to deliver the checks or check within the next 2 weeks.
Terrific. Well, Mr. McGraw, we would respectfully request that every time you come before us, you're making such offers. But with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments. Councilor Carney.
It's a considerable amount of money, and it's very impressive, but it could be very small amount of money. And then the question is, in regards to Lake Quannapowitt, Main Street side, what generated this number? In the sense of, are they talking about reducing the amount of flow coming off the streets around the lake, into the lake?
Could Mr. Renaud speak to that, Mr. Chair, just because?
Of course.
That's his.
If you could come up to the microphone just so we can hear you.
Yeah, Bill, I'll step aside for a minute, please.
Hey folks, Bill Renaud, town engineer. Yeah, so we had identified a project 3-4 years ago at this point now. We were going after grant funding that consolidated a bunch of the outfalls at the lake, also input treatment systems essentially in line. So it's basically just a larger project to take all that section of Main Street and make sure that we're treating the stormwater before it gets into the lake. So it has significant phosphorus and nitrogen removal. That's been the focus, because that's part of what causes the algal blooms, obviously. So, so that's a project that we went after grant funding for 2 different rounds, and we're unsuccessful in both rounds, unfortunately. And that estimate was the number that we had for the project and what we were requesting the grant funds for.
So you think you could considerably reduce the amount of flow coming? Of course, you know, everybody knows it's fertilizers or people maintaining the lawns that they never used to do. That's what's happening to the lake.
Yeah, so we've identified the numbers. So like the nitrogen, I think we're somewhere around 70% removal, and then for the phosphorus, I believe that was only 50%, somewhere in and around there. But we've, done the analysis, and we've identified a bunch of locations. As we worked with the Cabinet and Forbes folks on the Quinnipiac Parkway design, we identified some other treatment systems that we may look to implement that are a little bit smaller. So that may, that would also enhance some of those numbers that I'm talking about too. So.
Thank you. I compliment you for being on top of it. So I had to ask that question. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Butler.
Yeah, you might as well stay up here, Bill. So the 1.3 million in terms of water mitigation and lakefront cleanup, what percentage is that of what we would expect as to actually clean up the lake? Like, are we, is
That's a
this
tough
giving us a
question.
1.3 million that's going to solve something that is not, so we reduce our pollution by 20%, but it's still going to
So I don't have that answer
the lake
yet.
is crap.
So I don't have that answer yet. So we're in the process now of actually doing sediment testing within the lake to determine what approach we should use to solve the pollution and the algal blooms. So that's been a focus, and we're working through all of that. This 1.3 was identified for a specific project where I was looking at, obviously consolidating those outfalls and treating the outfalls before submitting those.
Because again,
discharges.
my feeling would be if it could cost us 1.3 million to do a significant cleanup of the lake, then it's silly that we're having CCF do this for us if we could have done it years ago. And when was the 1.3 million estimate made?
That would have been done 3-4 years ago at this point.
Now, do we think that's still, because everything else has risen
Well, like I said,
dramatically in cost?
We found some other, other alternatives to what we were originally proposing that would be smaller, smaller in size. So that would make, obviously it's a cheaper product too that we would be doing. So it's like newer technology using screens and filters as opposed to bioretention areas like we've been doing around the lake so far.
And I think the other thing that I'm always uncomfortable with, coming sort of from the financial world, I'm never comfortable with giving somebody the option of either writing us the check or doing the work themselves, because then if they're doing the work themselves, then it's not 1.75 million.
True.
And if they're giving us the cash, that means the job's more than 1.3. So, like, I guess that's where I'm mildly uncomfortable with this whole, with us taking 3.8 million and being like cheerleading it on. I'm not sure, you're probably getting ripped off.
I wouldn't agree with that statement.
No, I know.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you. I mean, just as a couple of points of context. So, be that as it may, I think our role here today is just to accept the donation. The conditions have already been put in place by the Board of Appeals. So I don't think we have any sort of legal bearing to be able to change sort of what those commitments are.
We can say no.
We could, but then we're also saying no to $3.8 million, and the project has already been permitted.
The 3.8 million, you're not saying no to $3.8 million because you're not getting 1.75. They already told you that. You're getting 1.3 for fix up, and you're getting 600 towards something.
So we'd be saying no to $2 million. If I may, we're saying no to $2 million that doesn't change the fact that the project is already permitted, right? So I think that's, regardless of sort of the decisions that were made, I mean, that this was something that was negotiated through the Zoning Board of Appeals as they have the ability to do.
Didn't he say that the Zoning Board of Appeals, to move forward with the project, we have to accept it? We have to accept the gift for them to move forward.
No, that's not correct.
I think we have to accept the gift to move forward with the mitigation payments.
We have to present the gift to you for acceptance. So the Board of Appeals, they're not going to condition something on another board's approval. They can't do that. So the special permit says that we only have to make the contribution if you accept it. So you're right, Councilor Chines, if it's not accepted, the project goes forward. But CC&F walks out pretty happy because they just saved $3.875 million.
So if we could put a pin in this just for a second. Mr. Renaud, if you could just jump back up on this one point, because it sounds like that is the question. So as I understand it, the concern is that a check for $1.75 million for the Quanah Parkway improvements, we would be assured that we'd be getting $1.75 million worth of improvements. Can you maybe just speak?
That's town cost. So obviously for us to do with prevailing wage, it's more expensive. It's definitely cheaper for them to build it, themselves, without a doubt. I mean,
But could you speak to like what so you know what you want in this Quanah Parkway improvement? You know what you're looking for. Yep. Could you maybe speak to the involvement you have from an oversight perspective, so that at the end the deliverable is what you would have expected it to be had we been handed 1.75 million?
We designed it. So so part of the agreement was that if we would design and permit it, that they would build it for us.
So it's like any other contractor that we bring in.
Any project that I would do.
You oversee, you have to approve it and sign off, and it's not to your specifications, then it doesn't get signed off on.
Exactly.
So in some ways, the 1.75 million, whether it's a check to us or it's the equivalent of that work that you can sign off on, ultimately we're getting the same end result. Am I understanding correctly?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
So does that allay a little bit of your concern? Because it's less about the cash to us and more about the end result product that is overseen by and approved by?
Yes, although it seems like it's sort of a fake
number.
argument, because they're building a huge condo or a huge complex there. They were going to spend money on a road to that anyway. It's not like we had a grand design around Quanah Parkway if that stayed an empty office building. We weren't going to do anything there. So, yeah, I mean, like, let's not talk about it as a gift. They were always going to build a road. Like, let's not overly, romanticize what this is.
I would. Excuse me.
Councilor Charney.
I think it's a great effort. I compliment you. I compliment the developers. This is even getting more positive. This is something we weren't expecting. Did anyone expect this money coming in? I didn't. So now they're offering this money.
I'm saying the 1.75 isn't money. It's a road that they were going to build anyway.
We weren't going to build that road.
What would you do? Where would your
correct me if I'm
people
wrong,
come
Joe,
in?
The Quantapug Parkway improvements are an independent project of the town that was designed by the town, in the pipeline of the town.
I guess, I mean, bottom line is, Mr. Renault, you're on the town side of this. You're the town agitator. So I guess from your perspective, you know, how do you feel about what we're getting with respect to this particular?
I think it's a terrific offer from the developer and that they were willing to do this for us. I think this is a win for the town. We're gonna get a wider shared use path area. They're gonna have paving with, reconstructed. They're replacing a culvert that's there. All of those are wins for Wakefield, for sure. And they've all been designed by my group. We also included additional stormwater treatment. So, I mean, they may have repaved it. That's possible, but they're doing a lot of other work beyond that. They're doing granite curbing. There's a whole slew of work that they're doing. So it's not, I wouldn't get stuck on the number. I look at it as, the end result, the project. That's how I look at it.
And this, you said, was in the pipeline, so this would have been taxpayer dollars used at some point in the future had we not had this funding coming in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I identified it in context with the project. So, I wouldn't say that I had it queued up at this point. That's probably a stretch.
Fair assessment. Okay, good. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Councilor Chines.
Mr. Chair, can I move that we accept the donation from Cabin Forbes as laid out in the orders of condition from the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Seconded.
Quick question for you, Mr. Mullen. Can we take all 4 of those together, or do we need to take them separately?
I would use a single motion.
Okay. So just to clarify, Councilor Chines, then you're looking to accept the total of approximately $3.875 million with the 4 different.
Correct. So that's
delineated.
including the $1.7 million of in-kind work for Quantapug Parkway, the $600,000 for intersection and roadway improvements, the $1.3 million for water quality improvements related to the Main Street project, and the $225,880, which is a very specific number, for inflow and infiltration improvements.
Okay. I had 1.75 down for the first one. Is that correct, Mr. McGrail?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
it's
did I not-
a value of the, approximate value of that.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Do we have any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, then the motion before you is the acceptance of a total of $3.875 million from Cabin Forbes with the town's thanks. All of those in favor? All of those opposed? Okay, so the motion carries 5-1 with Councilor Butler being in the negative. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very
And thank you,
much.
Cabin
Thank you.
Forbes,
Thank you.
for your contribution, and
Thank you.
we look forward to you being a very good neighbor,
Thank
hopefully,
you for
for
your
our
time. I
community.
appreciate it.
And we'll be
Thank you
back,
very much.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, with these other items that I talked about.
Correct. Yep.
Some of which will be very intriguing to the board, that they're actually going to request them to maintain some of the public land along the lake because they have a vested interest. Cabin and Forbes stated very early in this process, they are now a citizen, and they are very committed to Lake Quantapowhat and being involved in the improvements to Lake Quantapowhat going forward. They have a vested interest in doing so because they're probably the largest property owner on the lake. So any improvements to that lake improve the value of their property going forward. So they are committed to the lake and moving forward.
Well, I know this
So-
body loves green space, sidewalks, and trees all across town, so I just encourage Cabin Forbes to keep that in mind.
We will. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Mr. Chair, can I make one point?
Of course,
I just
Mr. Mayo.
want to thank Cabin Forbes, been a great partner with the town, but I really want to congratulate Mr. McGrail, whose oldest son is getting married this weekend. And so I want to wish you all the best this weekend. Have a wonderful time, and I won't call you all weekend.
Thank you.
Okay? I
And I'll be
promise.
officiating the wedding.
It's a great day. It's a great day for the
Congratulations,
McGrails, so.
Thank you, appreciate that comment.
And thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to jump back to the agenda in our order. This is item 5B, which is the North Avenue Flex Poles discussion. This is one of 2 discussions that Chair McLean had asked that we begin this evening. And so there will be no votes taken. There are opportunities, and Chairman McLean is looking to set up a general system whereby there are items to be discussed and considered by the council, and then at a follow-up meeting or the next meeting, more likely, in most cases, there would be a vote relative to that. So for this evening's purposes, we're only getting a bit of an update and overview. There's been a lot of discussion about these flex poles along North Ave. Obviously, there are none there now.
There are
That's
none.
under construction still. I know we have paving more.
Yeah, so we have patching going on by the curbing currently.
Right.
The plan is that the sidewalk will be topped next week, so we'll be in time, obviously, for the parade. That's a priority for us. One of the items that we're trying to still work out is the timing on the patching. So the patch there for the water main work that was done a couple years ago obviously needs a little bit of a brush up. So that's we're trying to coordinate all of that work at the same time, obviously prior to us doing any painting, based on the project that was approved previously. Regarding the flex posts, at this point, we haven't purchased them. I know there was some dialogue, so obviously we don't want to spend the money on it until we got the thumbs up. So we've evaluated a couple of options. One option that I like was a kind of a larger base. It's about a 6-foot by 9-inch base that essentially has the flex post that sits on top of it. We'd be looking to space those out, say, every 40 feet or so. And they're removable. We're actually not putting them in the pavement. We talked about that at the when we approved the project. We don't want to damage the pavement by drilling it in. These weigh they're pretty significant, pretty heavy. They're about 130 pounds or so they won't be picked up and moved away. That was obviously a big one for us, that we didn't want to have that happen. So I'm figuring we could come in with a proposal, show you kind of the layout, how we were planning to do this, and how. What they look like. We can definitely provide that. If there's any feedback on colors or any of that type of stuff, I'm happy to obviously follow the guidance from the council.
Great. So with that, I'll open up to any questions or comments. Councilor Carney.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm opposed to this. I ride the lake when it's good weather, every weekend. And I'm a little leery about the sidewalk right now. We've got a huge sidewalk there, and I've been pushed about another 3-4 feet into the road. And I'm concerned about flex poles. I ride through Somerville every day, and that's not working there. Mm-hmm. And there's some controversies right now in the city of Boston, what they're trying to do in there. I think the bottom line is, perfectly honest with you, mm-hmm. I'm going to start riding my bike 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to ride on that sidewalk when there aren't people there, because I'm not going to ride in that street. I'm a little leery of it right now. Okay. And to make that road a little bit thinner, and the fact that how wide are we going to make the bike path?
The bike lane is 6 feet wide, and then we have 2 to 3 feet of gore strip to break up between the travel lanes. Travel lanes will be 11.5 feet each, with a 1 foot shoulder on the inbound lane coming in. That was what was approved at the council.
So the lanes will be different sizes.
No, there'll be 11.5 foot travel lanes. The travel lanes will be 11.5 feet.
Both sides of the road.
Yeah, so that's about what. So if you're at the Quinnipiac Parkway light, those are 11.5 foot lanes. Right. One's 11, one's 11.5.
So when you lay out the road, it's going to be after the 6 feet for the bike lane.
Yep.
Then you can have 11.5 feet on either side of that, which is about the size of Main Street at this point. In other words, you can have 22 foot right away.
Yeah, we shift the center line over, so it'll shift from the wider sidewalk side towards the smaller sidewalk side.
Correct. So if all of a sudden we decide later on to take those down, the road is going to be thicker on one side than the other.
Yeah, we still have the pavement so curb to curb, we still have 36 feet. So that's what's there currently. That's what we constructed it to.
All right. I didn't want, the gentleman came tonight to speak in favor of it, of the I did not want to speak. I didn't want to, lay this off to another meeting. But when we do finally vote on this, I'm against it, and I've heard of a lot of people who are against it. I believe this is something that a group of people have decided this is good for the town, and I personally think it's bad.
Now, just to clarify too, it was added by the council. So we didn't include it in our original proposal. They were added by the council.
Correct. So
Okay. Yep.
when you presented, you were asked if it was part of your recommendation. It was not part of your recommendation.
At the time, it was not, no.
Correct.
You asked to add it as a board.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Carney. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Shines.
Just a couple of comments. I do think that it's worth trying this for a season, and one of the things I want to reinforce is What we liked about the flex poles when we talked about this, and I went back and I watched the meeting where we had a pretty lengthy discussion back in, I think it was December of 2022. What we liked about it was the fact that they were flexible, meaning we weren't making any structural changes to the roadway. They were something that we can add in for a safety barrier and something that we could take out at the end of the season so that it didn't impede snow removal. The beauty of that is that if we decide that for whatever reason they don't work out, we can take them out. We'd still have the striped bike lane there, but we can take them out without doing any major roadway construction. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of strong feelings on sort of what these posts are and what they mean. The beauty of the fact that they are removable means that we can test it out in a relatively low cost, no risk way. And so I think it makes sense to move forward. I think it's a pretty good solution. I think that at the end of the day, if we don't end up using them permanently, you know, it's a big town and we have a lot of materials that we use in different places. I'm sure there are other uses that we would find for the stock. And so I hope that we put them forward because I do think that they represent a good safety barrier, not only for bicyclists, but as Mr. Dooley mentioned earlier, for cars as well. Given that not only does it prevent bikes from going in, or cars from going into the bike lane, it prevents the opposite as well. So I think it makes sense to move forward and hope we do so next week or the next meeting when we talk about this.
So,
Thank you, Councilor Chines.
Oh, go,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Take Councilor Vincent's.
Councilor Vincent.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight, Mr. Renaud. If the poles are 40 feet apart, how many poles do you anticipate putting in, and where would it start and where would it end on?
So we would be ending, well, it's kind of difficult to say because we also have to lay them out with each driveway too. So 40 feet, it can't be a hard and fast rule for the 40 feet. So, you know, we haven't done that analysis yet because we haven't purchased them. So when we go to purchase them, we would do that. I also didn't want to go and just buy them if you folks want to make it 50 feet or something to that effect. So obviously I'm open to feedback on this. So however we want to handle this, if we want them or don't. You know, we have time. This isn't something that's happening and it's imminent tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination. So we'd be in July looking at probably painting in all likelihood. So the decision would need to be made, you know, prior to us painting. That would be about when we'd want to know on the paint side. And then, you know, I can give examples of what these look like. I think that's probably important too, because they have a pretty substantial base, the ones that I'm looking at, because, you know, again, I don't want them to be picked up and removed. I also don't want them to blow over, all that type of stuff. So originally we were looking at the ones that are like the in your crosswalks. It says, you know, do not, you know, yield to pedestrians. That type of post is kind of what we were looking at initially. The ones that I found at one of the seminars I attended seems to be a little bit more robust and will hold up better. So and they're actually easier to remove, stack, and you know, kind of they disassemble and whatnot. So. But I can explain all that to you. I mean, if there's a color difference or something, we can happy to look at. They have a black one that has kind of the reflective stripes in it, so we could do something like that, so it doesn't look as stark. I know some of the comments that I've heard and have been provided with talking more about them being like the yellow and orange, you know, colors. We don't necessarily have to do that. They can be more of a black style that is a little bit more context sensitive. But again, I'm open to suggestions on all of that. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Go ahead.
Do we have a
Councilor Butler or Bott? We could get
Alphabetically, I beat it now, so yeah.
Councilor Butler.
So just ballparking, how much do we think we're going to, how much do each of these cost, or how much do we think that it's going to cost to?
They're in the hundreds. They're in the hundreds each, and we're looking at, I mean, it's about a mile of road-ish, a little less, so probably 100 of them, somewhere around there.
Oh, so it's like 10 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how much,
yeah.
like, when someone runs into them, because now do you just replace the pole, or do you have to replace the whole piece?
Just the pole. Yeah, it's a rubber base. Like, so think.
Yeah,
if you've seen
that's
the
what I
other-
assumed.
Yeah.
So I guess, look, and this is to you, John. The bike lane is being painted and going in anyway. Like, that's happening, folks. It's not dissimilar to you guys telling me about the Cabot and Forbes building. That is going to happen. So why wouldn't we put in these poles that sort of, you know, potentially give people, I just think I'm not, I didn't vote for or against the bike lane, but now that it's going in, like, you might, my feeling is you should test out these poles. By the way, you see if, like, maybe night one, some kid takes out 7 of them, and then you have to,
Yeah,
no
and you see
offense,
that.
Ollie, it doesn't have to be some kid.
Thank you, Councilor Butler. Councilor Butt.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. One, I really appreciate what Mr. Dooling said earlier about that this is also to help drivers and so to protect the people biking and walking. I think that's really important. I think we try it for a season. It's not too costly of an investment. I'm going to disagree with Councilor Carney a little bit. I have biked in Somerville recently, and from what I hear, they protect bikers, and bikers are really appreciative. People who bike their children to school, actually, Somerville has a lot more bikers than we do. And so it's doing well in Somerville. So I think we tried here. And then I just wanted to say, I've walked the lake once since the sidewalk has been completed. And I just wanted to say thank you to you and your team, because that wider sidewalk, which is getting lost in all of this, makes it safer for walkers and people with strollers and little kids on tricycles. And so I think it's a great project that we've started, and I want to see it finished through. And just one more thing, just to talk about emails and communications we get, just like I get a lot from the high school students and their civics program, I get a lot of emails and communications about people that want us to try the flex polls. And so I just wanted to say that out loud, that there are people in our community who want this.
Thank you, Councilor Butt. One question, Mr. Renaud. For the next meeting, would you be able to have any photographs of something that's similar to like a 6-foot bike lane, then with the 2 to 3 foot gore strip?
Yep.
So
I can
people
have
can
a
kind
whole-
of visualize that. I know we've always had the cross-section drawings, which is our one thing, but I think being able to see what 6 feet plus a 2 or 3 plus a road, what that looks like.
Okay. Yep, I see what you're saying. Yep, I can see what I can do. I mean, I should be able to.
I would say
find
like
something.
with and without.
You're looking for a photo kind of showing it? Is that what
To
I'm-
kind of show, like an actual,
that's
an image. That would be. I think that would probably be helpful because the drawings are great, but I think the actual photographs would be, help to guide the decision making even more.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, Councilor Shines.
Just, sorry, one other question. This was my assumption, but I just want to make sure I clarify this. So with or without, based on the design of the roadway, with or without the flex poles, the width of the travel lanes is the same regardless?
It's 11.5 feet. That's what we're proposing.
Yeah,
So the
but
goal-
that doesn't change if we have the flex poles or not, because we're already striping them. Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to go. The poles will be placed within that. What's called a gore strip. So it's the hatched area that
Yep.
you see when you're driving. Those are called gore strips, and so we would put it in there.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Carney.
Just a follow-up question to what Jonathan just asked. You're gonna take 6 feet of the current roadway away.
More than that. So it'd be more. It would be more than that, right? So it's 6 feet from the lane, and then another. It's 2 to 3 feet is how we design the gore strip. So
Okay.
it's closer to 8 to 9.
So and again, in response to what Doug said, there's not gonna be a lane there if we don't put up the posts. It's gonna be, you're gonna make a lane by putting posts 6 feet out.
I don't know if I'm following you.
There's going to be a
You're gonna
bike
go
lane
from the
there,
curb
no
to the
matter.
post and make a 6-foot space, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were already painting it, right? So you're already going to have the paint. So we would have the bike lane painted with a gore strip, so that like kind of hatched area.
Yeah.
And that would be like a buffer. So you have a buffer with the hatched area, and then you'd have your 2 travel lanes. So I guess I'm not following.
I think
We're
for people,
painting it.
just to clarify, so
Yeah.
off the wide sidewalk, there's going to be a 6-foot wide
Yes.
bike lane.
Yep.
Then there's going to be 2 to 3 feet of buffer next to that.
Yep.
And then the road would begin for vehicular
Yeah.
traffic.
Yep. Exactly.
So the bike, I'll say the bike lane configuration, if you will be anywhere from 8 to 9 feet off the curb.
Correct.
So we're taking 8 to 9 feet of vehicular traffic.
Yes.
And then the vehicular traffic starts
Normal,
8 to
however
9
you wanna
feet
look
off the curb.
So right now, where the street is laid out, you're taking 9 feet off of that
Yeah.
and then making 2 different lanes.
That's
an awful
correct.
lot, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, that's the math. That's exactly,
So,
yes.
so again, 11.5 feet is what the lanes are. That's what's there when we get to the Quinnipiac intersection. We also have another section further down by the Galvin where it actually narrows even more. So we have a 10.5-foot lanes there, where we have that, the turn lane to get into the Galvin. So, you know, we have some of that, you know, space, so you can kind of help to visualize what this will end up as, when you're driving down there, you know, after, you know, whenever you're driving down on North Ave. So that'll be how wide those travel lanes will be.
And on the visuals piece too, Mr. Renault, is there a way that we would be able to either see a photograph in that kind of lane span of 11.5 feet where you had, say, 2 fire engines crossing at the same time, or a tractor trailer and a fire engine? Is there any way to kind of see what that...
In a photo, I don't think I can make that happen.
Or we have 11.5 feet across town though, right? We theoretically could have that even with 2 of our fire trucks, right? Have them...
You want to stage the fire truck so we can get a photo of it? That's what you're asking for?
To see what that looks like.
I mean, I
right?
can talk to the fire chief on that, if he can do it, if he'd be willing to do it.
If it's a bus too, a bus
Or a bus, or whatever the widest vehicle would be. I'm assuming it would be a fire truck, but I don't know if that's the
Yeah, it would
case.
be,
So if we can see what it looks like if 2 fire trucks are crossing, what does that look like? Okay.
Let's see, I can't, I'll see if I can make that
Or
happen.
even if we can't do that, at least at a minimum, just what the schematic would be of that, you know, so if
Okay,
we
yeah, that I
place
can-
that.
I can definitely
you
get
could
you
definitely do
schematic.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
I think the visuals would probably help this group.
And just a reminder,
Yes.
Chairman, the visuals will be helpful, but that when presented to the TAC, both the fire chief and the police chief signed off on the flex pole as a pilot program.
Yeah,
So
we
they
thought
did
we-
at that meeting.
Yeah, and we did have a site walk meeting as well.
Yep.
Where we talked about it as well. So again, you know, and I look at it this way, you know, it is paint that's going down and removable flex posts if we want to modify in the future. There's nothing here that would not allow you to do that in the future. So, you know, what I think is really the controlling factor is where the curbs ended up, and you have 36 feet still, so, curb to curb. So if down the road, the bike lane doesn't happen, or you folks don't care for it, or whatever has to happen, we still have the ability to modify that pretty, you know, on the cheap. So just a little bit of paint change. So.
All right, so this is a to be continued. Mr. Renault, you're back here at our next meeting in 2 weeks' time.
I sure will be.
I expect that the chairman will be asking for a vote at that time relative to these flex polls, so no votes this evening. So if people can be thinking about it, I encourage the public to reach out to Town Hall or any of your town councilors about this issue as well. Great, thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks,
Appreciate it.
We'll see you.
Next item on the agenda is item 5C. This is the 48 communities. You may...
Mr. Chairman, can
Yeah.
I make one more request to bounce things around?
You can,
I
Mr.
know you're
Mayor.
very quick on your feet. The WCAT.
We
working
can.
group,
We will jump to
because,
item,
the chair is there of that
Item
committee, and maybe
5E, WCAT Working Group, and I would invite up David Watts.
Maybe
and
David wants to go home.
I think Mr. Watts and Mr. Mayo will be tag teaming this one. So good evening, Mr. Watts, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David Watts Jr., currently chair of the WCAT Working Group. I didn't expect to be here. I expected to be back there, but, which was my understanding at the last meeting, but we'll do what we can.
I can jump in.
Go.
You're here to help.
Well,
So
yes,
anyways,
but the chair, who's a member of the working group, Mike McLean, has the actual report that was going to be presented here
They
tonight.
have the report.
Huh?
They have the report.
They do have the
We do.
report. Okay. So if there are any questions or comments, then we can do that.
And Mr. Mayo, if I
Yeah,
could turn to
I
you
can give
for
a
brief
real
overview.
thumbnail, so.
Just for the public.
For the public, so the town council created this committee because there was some concerns that as people's habits change in regards to how they get information, less people are getting cable. They're streaming, they're going to other products, YouTube, I guess. So the way the WCAT receives its revenue to run all the programs that they do, and the wonderful program they do, is from part of your cable bill. And your cable bill, and you may have noticed that when your cable bill comes in, a portion is paid for local access, PEG access fee. Part of that goes to WCAT. Part of that goes to the school department for their programs. So that number has been slowly declining because less people are getting cable or getting rid of it. So there was some concerns in regard to that and how things would go forward, because you would note that actually, what WCAT is receiving has been reducing over the years, although not as much as we feared. People seem to be keeping that in Wakefield, and maybe it's because there is more construction, and maybe people are getting in the new apartments are getting cable. So the town council set up this committee to kind of take a look at this and see what can be done. And we met, I think, 4 times here at WCAT. Had some very robust discussions, some very interesting discussions. And what we found out was a few things. Number one is, as I mentioned, the percent decline in revenue is not as steep as it had been. The curve seems to be flattening. I'm a little bit of an optimist, and I'm thinking when some of these new units get tenanted, like at Tarrant Lane, like at 200 Corner Parkway, some of the others are being built. Actually, some people may get cable, so maybe we'll have a few more subscribers. So I'm maybe the optimist on that. I'm not sure that that's shared by everybody in the group. Also, the executive director, Ian, who stepped in here, has done a great job in kind of reorganizing the department and really eliminated what was an operational deficit of 86,000, has eliminated that for this year. So that's all really good. On the not so good side, we were hopeful that there would be some state streaming legislation that would actually provide a source of funding that would come directly to not only the town, but would also go directly to local cable stations. Unfortunately, that kind of got bounced around in committee, and the actual law that went into committee, which I thought wasn't too bad myself. There was going to be a charge to the streamers. I think that 1/5 would go to the state, 2/5 would actually go to the town for general revenue, and 2/5 would go to the cable company. Well, that went into committee after a lot of iterations. What came out was very different, and basically, I think there's another committee to study this. So I think it's going to be a while before any streaming money comes our way. So what we decided that, and the only other thing we talked about, or one of the things we talked about, is during this whole backdrop, WCAT is working with a lot of construction that we just walked through to get here this evening outside the backyard. And we want to make sure that the new WCAT studio, which will be in the new building, will be set up, because WCAT has budgeted $260,000 for as far as new equipment and things like that. We want to make sure that we are able to parlay that as much as we can in the new building. So what the committee decided to do was that all the great service that WCAT does, that they do look to develop a plan to increase production services and get some other income from that. That WCAT, the town council, and town administrator monitor and lobby for the various streaming bills with an eye towards funding local cable operations, and that the WCAT working group be deemed a standing committee. And we meet periodically, but not less than annually, to review financials, budgets, and progress in other areas, as well as provide updates to the town council. So I think the bottom line is that because of work that WCAT did, the issue was not as dire as we thought going in. We still need to keep an eye on it and work together and make sure that we get that incredible service that we continue to get from WCAT. But a great group. We've looked at a lot of the financials, and I'm very anxious to see, as some of these new buildings come on, whether we actually see some new subscribers. So that's in a nutshell. It's really just an update. There's no action for the town council to take, but we're certainly open to any questions or comments.
Terrific. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mayo, and thank you to the work of the working group and Mr. Watts as chair. Anyone have any comments or questions for either Mr. Mayo or Mr. Watts? Councilor Butler.
What's the annual budget for, what does it cost to run WCAT?
I'm not on the WCAT board. I'm actually on this committee as a
okay.
media professional, although I have been with WCAT on the board in the past.
And we're going to welcome Ian McDermott, who's usually behind the camera and behind the scenes, our executive director of WCAT. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank
you. Good
you.
to see you.
So to answer your question, our current annual budget, which usually decreases by about 7 to 8% yearly, is currently at $350-ish thousand from this element of whatever we fundraise. So the cable money specifically is at about $350,000.
And then, so operationally, we were running at a bit of a deficit, so we were spending about 400.
Yeah, so the situation that we had, just to catch you up from previous, was the employment bill, the employee bill, along with all other sorts of expenses, had gone past what our budget would have been this year. But through several people leaving and new people coming in, we were able to readjust our employment costs to come just under what the number is. That'll stay for a year or two, couple of years, but with the expenses of everything else, that will start creeping back up again, and we will end up at this same problem.
The other problem from an industry point of view is that, and I'll use Verizon as an example, they announced some time ago that they were planning to get out of the business.
Yeah.
That would be 45% of your income?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, about 45% of the income. And there aren't new cable companies coming to the fore. RCN is still declining in subscribers. That would leave Comcast as pretty much the lone wolf in Wakefield if Verizon does decide to pull out. And they have reduced their contract terms to 5-year terms, where previously it was 10-year terms, going back to the beginnings of cable in Wakefield.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they're saying. There's almost zero chance that Verizon gets out of the cable business. But outside of that, like Steve, and this is, I guess, for us, is there a reason why we can't set a budget for them that is extraneous of what the cable companies pay us? And then, so we set a budget of $425,000 for WCAT, and then, like we do with every other group, we get grants or money from the cable companies.
You may not be aware, Councilor
Yeah.
Butler, that WCAT is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Okay. It's not a town
It's not
department.
a town department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do, I think we do run that through our
It's an
town
enterprise
meeting.
fund.
It's,
Yeah.
it's run through because
Right.
the DOR requested that we do it. That's a fairly
Oh,
new
okay.
thing.
But
That was
the-
never, in the past, we never did.
The original funding legislation for community access was a 100% pass-through.
Yeah.
Whatever came in on the franchise fee, which is what you see on your bill, would pass through a community to the local access organization. I would say most of the access organizations are 501c3 nonprofits going back to the origination of it in the late 70s.
And the legislation doesn't allow, like, internet-only customers do not pay anything into this.
No,
right? It's only
they
if you
do
get
not.
cable TV, and
So,
that's the
people
big
who
change you
drop
wanna have.
cable but
Yeah.
keep internet, WCAT and the town, the school department lose that funding.
Yeah, years ago, when they were first putting out the cable bill in the 90s, 80s? 80s, 86.
80s.
The discussion and the argument in the back doors was that, okay, you can tax the cable part, but not any other services that we do, because at that time, they had things like QVC and home shopping. They didn't want that part because that was their greater portion, as I understand it. They didn't want that getting taxed as well, because otherwise we probably would have had millions of dollars at that point.
But to answer your question, Councilor Butler, this board and the town may very well decide at some point that there needs to be some supplement to the service with tax levy.
Would we be able to do that if it's a 501c3?
Well, we might pay for services. We're going to pay to,
Okay.
you know, so
We
yes.
pay for WCA.
Pay for, yeah, pay
okay.
for doing
This.
our meetings and things
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
So that's something that may be on the horizon, because there is a value add here that we're looking at.
See, the other problem, the streaming bill, this is the second or maybe third iteration the bill has come up, and it has been allowed to die at the end of each session prior to this. And unfortunately, between the changes that have been made to the bill and the fact that the session this year ends early because it's an election year, it's going to be very hard to get action in the current legislative session to help not just WCAT, but all of the community access stations in the state. And there are quite a few.
So I think our plan is maybe to meet, I thought we thought about maybe a date in September or October when
September is
when the
the
audit was
next-
done
yeah.
of their numbers to kind
Yeah.
of
So
reconvene.
September
and
is
come
the
back.
next meeting. We've talked about quarterly meetings going forward because not enough is changing fast enough to warrant monthly meetings.
Sure. Okay, well, it sounds like so this is continuing to be a work in progress, and we'll get updates going forward. Thank you again to the working group for your time. I also noticed, Ian, that you have awfully good lighting on you, and I think that has to do with your role within this studio. I'm kidding. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Watts. Thank you, Mr. McDermott, and thank you, Mr. Mayo, for that. That's very helpful. All right, moving on to item 5C. This is the 40A discussion. This is otherwise known as the MBTA Communities Act. You might remember that for those watching at home, there was a discussion at the town meeting relative, and there was ultimately a vote on a couple different iterations of plans regarding this 40A MBTA communities, and this is a state mandate relative to the opportunity for a set amount of housing as a matter of right within MBTA transit. This was placed on the agenda by Chairman McLean in the hopes that we would at least begin to have a little bit of a discussion in terms of where we go from here as a community relative to this requirement. We are required by the end of December of this year to be in compliance. Otherwise, we face potential litigation and loss of certain income streams from various grant opportunities. It's obviously a very controversial topic, and there's been a lot of debate across the state. I'm sure most people are fully aware of what the arguments are. This is more discussing what a path forward may look like relative to how we consider addressing this going forward. And so Chairman McLean wanted to open this up for any thoughts people had in terms of how we would reconstitute or constitute any sort of entity that would look at this and be involved with this going forward. And then he had some ideas of his own relative to that, but he was looking for any thoughts people had amongst the six of us. Councilor Carney.
The one thing that concerned me as we kind of weeded through the possibilities, and the planning board came up with a third alternative, was that there were people who had no idea, that this was even affecting the neighborhood. No idea. So the only thing that I think is important, one of the things I think is important, I should say, is that once we come up with a plan, that we use either our telephone services or mailing or something to let every person know who lives on that street affected that they are being affected. So give them due warning that this is happening to their neighborhood. The other thing is, I think we have a town planner now, Mr. Chairman. Can we use that town planner to come up with all of the various possible scenarios we can come up with, and then we can discuss them and argue and discuss and come up, and debate which are the best ones. I think that's one possible approach.
In terms of a configuration or composition, and anyone else have any other ideas relative? Councilor Chines?
Sure. A couple of thoughts on this, and I know I've been sort of ruminating on this probably immediately after day one of town meeting, and have spoken with some folks individually as well. I think a couple of sort of principles for us to think about it. One is that, first of all, timing is going to be tight, and while fall town meeting and December 31st feels a long way off, just as we look at the calendar, whatever the plan is to bring to town meeting, we probably need to finalize that around September so that we have time to refer it to the planning board for the hearing that they have to do under the charter, meaning that we basically have the summer to gather feedback. And so I know we're hoping to kind of have a discussion now and kind of coalesce around a direction at our next meeting. I don't think we can let that go past the next meeting because the calendar is gonna fly away. I think a couple of sort of observations from town meeting and the discussion that we had. Two, I think, are particularly salient. One is I think there is an appetite for doing something that's above sort of a so-called minimum compliance map, and so I do think that's one sort of guidepost that we probably need to follow. I think the second is because we effectively had three different maps that we were kind of talking through at town meeting, I think that generated a lot of confusion, right? I mean, this is really complex stuff. You know, it is difficult to understand any zoning change, and when you have basically like three zoning changes that we're kind of talking about all at the same time, it's a lot. And so as I think about sort of what makes sense to me is I would love to have a process where you know, we maybe put together three sort of straw man options and have a public survey and a public meeting this summer to kind of get some feedback on that, and then based on that direction, try to coalesce around one option that goes in front of town meeting. Process-wise, how we do that, whether that's a subcommittee of town council that kind of puts those together and works with the town planner to kind of get that information out there, I think that's an appropriate way of working through it. We can figure that out sort of next time in terms of if that's the right approach and kind of who would be involved. But I think doing something to try to focus on sort of, you know, some of the key variables that we talked about, meaning, is it just downtown focused or is it downtown and Greenwood? Is it, you know, something where we try to create a district that's maybe a little bit larger because fewer units are allowed by right, or something that's smaller where more density would be allowed? I think there are some sort of concepts that we should try to test through a survey this summer and then use that to come up with a plan that, again, hopefully has as much support as possible, certainly among our council, but, you know, even more broadly in the community before we go to town meeting in the fall.
Thank you, Councilor Chines. Councilor Vincent.
Thank you. In the last process, there was an MBTA 48 working group who did a lot of the assessment that Councilor Chines is talking about, and then they made their presentation to the planning board. I'm a strong advocate that the town council should create a subcommittee and take over that role and work with the director of strategic planning and whoever else we and the town administrator deem appropriate to work on a town council subcommittee to make sure that we have compliance by the end of this year. We get elected to make tough decisions. We ought to take the lead on this and create a subcommittee. That's what I'm going to be an advocate for the next time we meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Butler.
I think the only other thing I would say is that we need to make it clear to people, to the townspeople and to the voters, what the costs of saying no are. What we didn't do, they just didn't do a great job of that. They didn't, and by the way, everybody knew that we had this second town meeting, so there's a huge appetite to say no that first time. The question is if, you know, and this is probably why, if the Attorney General wants to get this enacted, she has to be hard on Milton, because if she's not hard on Milton, then nobody's saying yes. So that's the other issue, is if we go into town meeting and it looks like towns are getting away without doing it, you can bet your bottom dollar that our town meeting won't vote to do it either.
Great. All right, I'll say that Chairman McLean was inclined to look at perhaps forming a subcommittee of this body, a three-member subcommittee, which obviously would be an option that we could consider. I do expect that he would be looking for a vote to that effect at the next meeting, so if anyone is interested in being a part of that, I'd encourage you to reach out to Chairman McLean relative to that in advance of our next meeting. And I would say that, to your point about Milton, the scheduling by the SJC has done communities no favors, because the oral argument on that won't be heard for still some time, and so by the time a decision comes out, it may be after a lot of community town meetings, or it may even be into 2025 for all we know. So that likely won't be a lot of guidance, you know, regardless on that.
I think the expedited hearing was moved to October.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So, you know, by then, I mean, we're probably talking anywhere from like 3 to 4 months, you know, before we have any
But
sort
I
of...
think we talked about that we would have missed out on like $2 million of funding. I think what we need to talk about is, what do we think we're going to miss out on going forward? Like, that is, like, it isn't the costs of what we've already gotten, but what are the things that we might be putting up for grants that we're not going to get now if we say no. I think
Yeah, so the
we really need
estimates-
people to understand what the costs of no are.
Right, so the estimates were $1.5 to $3.5 million for the town, and another $1 to $2 million that Gas and Light would lose out. So close to $5 million for our town. And we have an obligation as the town council to, like, we have a fiduciary duty to pass something by the end of the year, because that's a lot of money to say no to. And so I hope whoever is on that committee thinks about getting to consensus and then sharing, using our communication tools, Steve, like our communications manager and other, to explain, whether it be through our website, a mailer, robocalls, as Councillor Carney said, to explain that losing $5 million, upwards of $5 million should not be an option for our town.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Chines?
And just to sort of piggyback on that, when we talk about $5 million, we're talking about $5 million in the relatively near term. Like, that is not a long-term number. I mean, that is stuff that is in the pipeline at the town level at MGLD right now. And so I think, Councillor Butler, to your point, like, there are real dollars attached that kind of got lost in the discussion. And again, it's a complex topic, right? And there wasn't a lot of time to present it, and so I get it. But I think that those are real numbers, and those are real numbers over the next couple of years. I mean, there's a longer term issue of, if we were to be out of compliant for multiple years, that $5 million number goes up pretty significantly.
Councillor Carney?
Yeah, my recollection of the argument at town meeting had nothing to do with that. The argument at town meeting was that I believe you had the arrogance of a planning board who went forward against what all of the public was saying to them. And that's what caused all of the bad feelings and all of the pressure. It had nothing to do with the benefits of losing anything, Doug. It's the fact that people said they're being affected. So now we have to go somewhat apologetically, because some people in this town, we have no choice, they're going to be affected. You know that. Okay, part of the district is going to include streets that we have no choice, they're going to be affected. So to them, we have to explain to them what the effects are, what could possibly happen. But then the streets that are outlying, that we might add to meet that minimum, and I think I might disagree with you, Jonathan, the fact that you want to go beyond the minimum. I think that's what caused it.
No, he's saying we now need
I
to
misunderstood
go
you
to the
then.
minimum.
Okay. So getting back to that minimum, and the safest minimum we can come with, and make sure that people understand it. No.
And just to be
Councillor
clear, there
Byer.
was an option for the minimum that Councillor Dombrowski put forward, and that was also rejected. So there was a proposal that had the minimum, and we did have that. So
And I voted against that, and I told Councilor Dombrowski the fact that the people he added had no clue at this point in time. There was no time to notify the people on the west side that were added. So some people get left out. So that's the issue, is make sure the people know ahead of time. And we might, at the beginning, say, okay, this core group of people, you have no choice. This is going to be part of your district, so you better be thinking about it. And then how we're going to add to that to get to the minimum that's going to be the hard work.
Indeed. So again, so if anyone is interested in being a part of the subcommittee, I expect that there would be a motion to that effect, and then if that committee is created, then at that point the chairman would decide who's appointed onto it. My own personal perspective on this is that I think the planning board failed to listen to the people that it represents. And ultimately, that was the downfall of this entire discussion. And if you don't listen to the people that you represent, the people will respond. And I think that's what we saw at town meeting relative to that. All right, so that's a to be continued. We'll pick up that discussion at our next meeting in 2 weeks' time. Item 5D on the agenda is town council goals. Chairman McLean had asked that everyone think about what some of his or her goals were for the year. And so I'm just going to go around in no particular order and just ask that if you could just highlight a couple or a few of the goals that each of you have for this upcoming this year, this session. And from here, I expect that the agendas going forward will be crafted to give deference and reflect the goals and priorities of the council, and also get a sense of what some of the more popular issues are relative to the year ahead. So with that, why don't we begin with Councillor Vincent to my right.
Okay, thank you. I'll make this pretty easy. My goal is one, and it's housing. I got elected in 2022, and the first project I worked on was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which had been recommended as far back as 2015 and hadn't been enacted. Fortunately, it was enacted at town meeting a year and change ago. Also, the town council was kind enough to allocate $200,000 recently in ARPA money per my request for additional money for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I have 10 months left in my current term, and I want to emphasize getting more control over 40B. I think it's imperative that we get a new housing production plan approved and get it certified as quickly as possible. I respectfully disagree with prior decisions of the town council not to renew the 2015 to 2020 housing production plan for an additional 5 years. I think when you look at our subsidized housing inventory numbers between December 2020 and 2023, our ZBA, who unfortunately has not been able to invoke the safe harbor provision because they have to show a 2% increase in SHI numbers over 1 year. But if we had a certified housing production plan, the goal is, or the requirement is for 1 year to push back on 40Bs, you need to have 0.5% increase in your SHI, which is 57 units. And to get it certified for at the 1% level, which allows the ZBA to push back on 40Bs for 2 years, is 114 units. Between December 2020 and June of 2023, we added 292 SHI units. So I think that it's absolutely imperative that we get a new HPP approved, which is a lengthy process. That will take probably into early 2025, because you also have to give 3 months to the housing authorities to then look it over once we present it to them. And then after we get it approved, try to get it certified. How I plan to achieve that goal is I've already had 2 meetings with the Director of Strategic Planning. The town administrator has created or is creating a housing advisory committee to work with the Director of Strategic Planning to support housing production plan efforts. I have asked the town administrator and our chair if the town council could have a seat on that housing advisory committee, and if so, I am volunteering to sit on as the town council liaison to that housing advisory committee. I also asked our chair to assign me again to be the liaison to the housing authority, the Wakefield Housing Authority. I want to be involved in as many of the different housing components that the town has over the next 10 months so I can achieve these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vincent. Councilor Carney.
Yeah, my main goal is to get through the MBTA redistricting. And my other concern is, person I've worked with for many years at town meeting got up and talked about his concerns about the school budget getting beyond its limitations and the effect it's going to have on the town on the long term. And I think we ought to be concentrating a lot on our future expenditures here, because sooner or later the availability of money is just going to start to get a little less and we're going to have to start working with more stringent controls over our finances. And I think that's something I want to concentrate my time on.
Terrific. Great. Thank you. Councilor Butler.
Sure. I also probably want to, I come to us from the Finance Committee, so I'm definitely focused in terms of understanding our budget and understanding not just our goals for new growth, and really trying to expand our growth, because again, if we want to remain a great community, we still have to continue to grow. But we shouldn't grow, we've historically grown with, some degree of profiteering by local businesses, and that probably needs to be addressed and really recognized as, we have a lot of, we've had issues with downtown, we've had issues with housing, and we keep sort of rubber stamping the same sort of behavior. And probably it calls on us, but it also calls on other boards of ours to make changes and make hard decisions rather than just looking at what is and is not allowed and sometimes saying no.
Thank you, Councilor Butler. Councilor Butt.
So some overlap. I had 5 things that I said. One was getting 48 MBTA communities passed by the end of the year. Second was the completion and progress of all the ARPA funded projects that we approved, including the senior center renovations, economic projects, and housing fund. I'd love to work on a better formal process for grant writing, particularly in HHS and DPW. I think there's a lot of money out there to help with our economic forecast. I hope we continue the succession planning conversations that we've started, including hiring of the new positions and replacement of some vacant positions. And this is something, the fifth is something we talked about in the past and we haven't got it off the ground, but I think I'd love to see a transit committee. So a way to talk about microtransit, MBTA, bus advocacy, the senior van, kind of all of that under the transit umbrella in town.
Terrific, thank you, Councillor Butt. And Councillor Chines to round it out.
Thank you. I have, I think, 4 buckets, although I suspect I probably lumped a few things in some of the buckets, so it may be more than 4 goals when all is said and done. The first bucket is related to town facility projects. So obviously for me, the continued progress and successful completion of the Wakefield Memorial High School project is really priority 1. The completion of the senior center renovations, as Councillor Butt mentioned, that we envisioned through ARPA funding is a second priority. I think there's a great opportunity to activate some space there and create some more programming for seniors as well as others in the community. So I'm excited about that. And I think as part of that sort of facility goal, also coming up with a plan for the DPW facility. So this has been something that's sitting out there for a while. We funded a feasibility study that came back with some very large price tags that probably aren't sustainable, but there is work that we need to figure out, and I think we need to address what our long-term kind of prognosis for that facility is. Second priority is continues to be in the area of sidewalk expansion. So I'm really excited that we have a bike and pedestrian plan that's identified some of the areas where we need to be building and renovating and restoring sidewalks. We just need to bring those to completion. And I would say as part of that, continuing to activate some of the spaces around the lake where we have the ability to do, not necessarily sort of full like bike paths or whatever, but, trails and things like that allow people to access more of the shoreline. Third goal is related to the Small Business Incubation Fund that we talked about with our ARPA funding that, myself, Councillor Danahy, Councillor Dombrowski had all worked on. We've allocated money to it, but we do need to have a legal structure for it so that those dollars can be used and not clawed back by the federal government. And so that's a key priority for me, is making sure that we have that in place. And then fourth, looking at our plans for the Hurd School property, the Butler Avenue property, and potentially the 5 Common Street property next to Town Hall. And I think this dovetails with Councillor Vincent's focus on housing and finding ways that we can activate those spaces to address some of the housing needs in town.
Thank you, Councillor Chines. I have 3, downtown, and downtown. That's something that the Envision Wakefield goes back to about 2018. We have 2 really significant projects coming out in upcoming fiscal years relative to the streetscapes, and I think that's going to be transformative. But I do want to see that our business community be able to thrive. I want to be able to see us really have robust economic development in a way that we haven't before. I'm encouraged by the Economic Development Council that has been meeting regularly now, and the kind of work that's being done there, and the ideas that we have going forward. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with that group in the year ahead, as well as with DPW on the Envision project, which again has been going back now 6 years. The other 2 I would just add would be roads. I think making sure that we are doing a much better job with our roads management, but I think we have still a ways to go. We went from less than a mile a year to about 6 miles a year, but we need to do better, and that's a longer term plan and project. And finally, working on focusing on cleaning up our lake with obviously the ultimate goal of it becoming swimmable. And I do think that that's something we can all see within our lifetimes with the kind of technology and innovation that's out there. So those are some of mine for the coming year ahead. All right, well, thank you for that. And again, I expect Chairman McLean will take this, and help. This will help to craft the agendas going forward and some of the priorities and any other work that we're doing going forward. Councillor Chines.
Did Chairman McLean have any priorities that he was prepared to share, or do we just not know that?
I don't have them. I know he has priorities, but I would defer to the next meeting for him to offer them directly.
Okay, thank you.
I'm certain he does, though. Moving on to our next item, item number 6, donations. We already covered 6A, but so we're on to 6B, the library. So I'll entertain a motion to accept an amount in the total of $15,227.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Chine, seconded by Councilor Butt. Any discussion? And for any,
From Cabot Cabot and
well,
Forbes.
it was not. No, just for anyone watching at home, 15,000 of that amount, 15,000 of the 200 of the 15,227 was actually a friends of the library, and that was from the book sale that was recently had. So that we express our gratitude and thanks for that. So with that, we have a motion that's been seconded. All those in favor? All right, I see a vote of 6-0. The motion carries. Thank you for that. Moving on to item number 7. This is appointments. This is going to be our last vote of the evening. This relates to an unexpired term for the Housing Authority tenant representative, or also known as the town-appointed tenant board member. This is a term that is needing to be filled through April of 2025, so it's under a year. We're filling out the remainder of an unexpired term. We have 5 candidates that have been identified, that have submitted and have been identified in our packets. We have 1 candidate who provided supporting materials, and 4 others who identified that they're interested in going forward. Before we just take a nomination, I'd be open to accepting or having any sort of discussion relative to a process of how to kind of best think about identifying what we're looking for in these candidates. We have very limited information, save for 1 candidate who we obviously have more. So I think we're working with very limited information here.
I'm looking for the 5 candidates. Where are they?
Oh,
listed?
they were at page 44 in the PDF.
Yeah.
Oh, if you on here.
Public housing.
I can identify them by name, and so they are Catherine Florence, Jeff Foxon, Ed Cutting, Joan Pava, and Denise Ferrara. But we have very limited information on these candidates, aside from the 1 candidate, Ms. Florent, who provided a resume and other information.
I believe if I read the notice correctly, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
they asked for them to fill out those applications.
correct. So
Only
everyone,
1 person filled out an application.
all 5 filled out the form. There was a form that was
I don't
provided,
see
and
it, that's
all
right.
5 did fill out a form. The problem is the form doesn't have very much
Form just
information.
says, like, their name and why they're.
If I may.
Yeah,
The problem is,
Councilor
in order
Vincent.
to comply with the state requirement, because this is the state-appointed representative we're the ones that appoint them. They just had to complete that form only. And they did, they complied with that. But that doesn't give us supporting information in order for us to discern, in my opinion, who is the best candidate to fill that position. That 1 person went above and beyond positively and provided, additional information to us. The other ones, it wasn't that they didn't provide additional information because they chose not to. They just were complying with the state requirement of what they had to fill out, which was a 1-page form. That puts us in a difficult position trying to figure out who's the best candidate.
And in fairness, any appointing authority, because it's
Exactly.
we have very limited information from which to work off of. The only other thing I'd mention, and I'd call on your institutional knowledge, Mr. Mayo. I know that when we've had similar situations in the past, and there has been someone who has run for this position, this body has considered that in making an appointment, basically. Is that
has been tradition.
right? We're not bound by that by any means, but it is tradition. So I just put that out there for what it's worth. So with that, I don't think we have much to work off of. So,
Mr. Chair, just a question. I don't know if Chair McLean, I believe he is the liaison to the Housing Authority. I don't know if he had any feedback on this, or?
he didn't.
Okay.
He didn't have much feedback, no, on it.
And I ask that partly because in the past when we've done appointments, the other thing that has been helpful is we often get a recommendation from the body to which the individual would be appointed. And, particularly, boards like the Zoning Board of Appeals, where they look for sort of balance of skills, I find those recommendations to be really helpful. And, if we don't have it today, that's fine. But I think if we can start to kind of set that as an expectation with appointments, and I know Ms. Dalton has done a good job when we do kind of the large number of appointments of soliciting that feedback. But I, at least personally, as 1/7 of the appointing authority, find that feedback to be incredibly helpful.
I agree. I think, given what we have now, though, so I'll accept the nomination now. One suggestion I would have, just as one of 7, is that I think we have the fullest picture of Ms. Florent. She has run before. She has a resume she submitted to us. She has housing authority experience, and she was on the finance committee. So that, and I think she's like a chemist or something too. She said in her. So I would just suggest that.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to appoint Catherine Florent to the Housing Authority for the state. Help me out, Councilor Vincent. The state subsidized.
Yeah, it's a town
tenant representative. I apologize.
Town appointed
Thank you.
tenant board member seat. Yeah. So is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? By a vote of all opposed.
I'm going to abstain.
And abstentions of
We're
1.
not having sufficient information to make a decision.
All right, so with that, we have a motion carries, a vote of 5 in favor, and with 1 abstention, Councilor Vincent. All right, thank you for that. And I do think that's an inherent flaw in this form because it doesn't provide much information. The other appointments are appointments that are actually made by the chairman, and for those watching, each with the turnover of leadership, each chairperson has the ability to name members of this council to various liaison capacities. So I'm going to just go through. It's kind of like the Emmys or the Oscars, right? We need a drum roll here, and I'm sure CIT can do it. So I'm just going to go through.
Now we know why you didn't want to be here.
So I'm the messenger. I'll leave it at that. No, just kidding. So with that, we'll start with Councilor Carney. So Councilor Carney, congratulations. You have been assigned as liaison for the Bylaw Review Committee, the Environmental Sustainability Committee, the Commission on Disabilities, and the Council on Aging.
I got that one by default.
Councilor Butler, you have been assigned as liaison to the BB Library, the Gas and Light Department, the Master Plan Committee, and the Youth Council. Councilor Butt, you have been assigned to the Human Rights Commission, the Capital Planning, Economic Development Council, Traffic Advisory Committee, and the Recreation Department. Councilor Chines, you have been assigned to the Permanent Building Committee, the School Committee, Health and Human Services, and the Police Department. Councilor Vincent, you have graciously, I believe, accepted warrants again and been assigned to the Historical Commission, the Housing Authority, and the Fire Department. Chairman McLean will be on the WCAT Working Group, the Finance Committee liaison, as the chair always is, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the School Building Committee. And I have been assigned the Economic Development Council, the Veterans Advisory Board, and the Department of Public Works. So congratulations to all the winners. With that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is licenses. Our first license, item 8A, is a Class 2 license renewal for New England Detroit Diesel Allison, Inc., doing business as Vintage Automotive. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of that license renewal.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Chine, seconded by Councilor Butt. Any discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? By a vote of 6-0. Motion carries. Next, item 8B, entertainment license for library, and this is for Plaza Jazz. I hope this will be unanimous. With that, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve the entertainment license for BB Library for Plaza Jazz with enthusiasm.
Indeed.
Seconded with enthusiasm.
Motion made by Councilor Chine, seconded by Councilor Butt. Although, any discussion?
I can't stand jazz, but I'm voting yes.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Wow.
Now I have to say something.
Appreciate the honesty.
As
Councilor Vincent.
the father of a daughter who's put out 2 jazz albums, I enthusiastically endorse this.
All right, fair enough.
Who knew this was going to be the most controversial thing we talk about?
Indeed. This is going to be the front page of tomorrow's item. So with that, there's been a motion that's been seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Vote of 6-0, the motion carries unanimously. Item number 9 is fiscal year 2024 warrants. We have warrants 42, 44, and 46, and I'll turn it over to Councilor Vincent.
So my assignment to do it another year, does that make me a winner or Sure.
In the eyes of the beholder, I suppose.
I actually enjoy doing the warrants. Okay, so warrant number 42 is 9.868 million. Of note, 1.4 million of that was group insurance. 2.971 million of that was with the light department, and 2.6 million and change was the town council, and that was for Wakefield Memorial High School. Number 44 is 2.899 million and change. Of note, 1.3 million was with the treasurer department, and 818,000 of that was the light department. And the one thing I will note is that there was tree service of $199,000, and that was for trimming branches near the wires at the new energy park. And the last one is number 46. That was $8.2 million in change. 2.2 million of that was the light department. 2.368 million of that was public works, and $858,000 of that money was with the treasurer department. I also note that the MWRA assessments that we provide 10 of those payments per year, $333,000 and $682,000 collectively are for the water and sewer rates that we pay to MWRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vincent. Any questions for Councilor Vincent? Just have one quick question for Mr. Mayo on that. The tree trimming of almost 200,000, was that identified or budgeted in when we talked about the energy park? Do you happen to know by chance?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I think it's a light department expense.
Okay.
Anyway, just ran through us.
Yeah, it was definitely part of the light.
Yeah.
Right. But so, I mean, ultimately ratepayers nonetheless, right?
Ultimately ratepayers.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was part of the
Was
budgeted
it?
cost of the project.
Moving on to item number 10, that is the approval of our minutes from our May 13th meeting. Do we have any suggested corrections relative to those, or did they look good as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, motion made by Councilor Chines, seconded by Councilor Butt. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Vote of 6-0, carries unanimously. Item number 11 is announcements. Does anyone have announcements they'd like to make before we conclude this evening? Councilor Chines.
I have a few. First of all, since this is our first meeting since the class of 2024 graduated, I just wanted to extend our congratulations as a council to the class of 2024, as well as our moving on classes this year, the classes of 2028 and 2032. I mean, we saw with the youth council presentation today, I mean, we turn out some absolutely amazing young people here in Wakefield. And, every year I feel when, you hear about the graduating class and you hear the speeches and some of the accomplishments, you think, wow, I mean, these folks are amazing. No one's ever going to top it. And every year, I have the same sentiment. So I just want to pass along our congratulations and let everyone know from, again, the graduating class of 2024 and our moving on classes, how proud we are of you as a community and how grateful we are for everything that you do to represent us well. A couple of other exciting things. I'm really excited. I had mentioned a few meetings ago that there was a group in town that has been working on scheduling a Porch Fest. And that Porch Fest is actually scheduled for Saturday, September 7th. So really excited for that. I know they have some venues lined up and are looking to get some acts lined up. I know they're also looking for volunteers. This is a community-led effort, though certainly they've had a lot of help from our Community and Economic Development Director, Aaron Kokinda, as well as others in town, but encourage folks to sign up for that and to mark your calendars, because that'll be a great event to look forward to. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, and Councilor Bunt mentioned this earlier, because it is the end of the school year, a lot of us have been getting those kind of calls and emails about the civic action projects, both in the 8th grade at Galvin and in the 11th grade at the high school. And the two observations that I would make are, first of all, again, just wow, the caliber of the projects, the questions, the ideas that our students have been amazing. I hear the teachers continuing to apologize for me when I join Zoom meetings and respond to emails just for bothering us. And I just want to say, for me, it's absolutely no bother. It's an absolute joy to hear from some of our students. And I would also say it's an absolute joy just to get a sense as to sort of what's on their minds. And again, Councillor Butt mentioned this as well, but I want to reinforce, I've had 3 or 4 different groups, both at the middle school and high school level, reach out to me about bike and pedestrian safety. And so we'll be talking about it more next time. And again, you know, with one particular project, but I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that, you know, this is a priority for our young people. And, you know, while they may not be old enough to vote yet, you know, they do have a stake in the future of the town. And I hope we take that feedback seriously. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chines. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. Less than 2 weeks ago, Mr. Mayo and I hosted a meeting to get some folks together to talk about the Soldiers and Sailors Civil War Memorial Rededication Ceremony. The work's going very well on the repairs on the figurines, and the company that specializes in this and is doing the repairs is going to be coming out in June to actually work on the pedestals and to work on the monument itself. The meeting that Mr. Mayo and I hosted had the superintendent of schools, the school committee chair, the chair of the historical commission, the chair of the Veterans Advisory Board, Jen McDonald, and Ann Waite from Public Works, brainstorming ideas about what we want to have, when we want to have it. We penciled in June 1st, 2025. And the reason we penciled that in is the memorial was originally dedicated on June 17th, 1902. April next year is the 160th anniversary of the end of the Civil War. And Dr. Lyons very astutely reminded us of when the children get out of school. And we wanted to have it on June 1st because there's a collective decision to make sure that we have the elementary, middle, and high school students significantly involved in the rededication ceremony. So we'll continue to have, this is a little bit different than, you know, Memorial Day, Veterans Advisory Board, Pride, Human Rights Commission. There is no designated town commission, committee, or board to do the rededication ceremony, so Mr. May and I decided to start the process. And we'll provide you more information as time goes along. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Any other announcements?
I have one, believe it or not.
Mr. Mayo, yes.
At our next meeting on June 24th, there will be the setting of the water sewer rates. Even though MWRA will not have given us the final rates yet, but Joe Conway and his staff do a really, really good job anyway. And every city in town is in a bad place because it's hard to not have the final rates, but they've got a good idea where they're going to be. So my suggestion is that if you haven't been through the process before, use these next 2 weeks to set up a time to, you can go through my office or talk to Joe or Ann Waite directly, because it is a pretty complicated process to go through. So I just want to throw that out there to make sure that you have time to sit down. I'm happy to do it with you, but Joe does a great job, he and his team, and if you go ahead of time, it'll be make that evening much smoother. Thank you.
Thank you,
I would also
Mr. Mayor.
suggest watching the advisory board of
Yeah.
Public Works meetings when they talk about this in detail. That's very educational.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, so I would just, I'll end the announcements by wishing everyone a happy Pride Month. We had a very good Pride event recently, I think it was on June 3rd. We have a Juneteenth event coming up actually on the 20th of June, so wishing a happy Juneteenth as well. And a happy Flag Day, which will be on this Friday the 14th. We have a ceremony on the Upper Common at 7 p.m. Finally, I'd mentioned that on Thursday the 13th, the Wakefield Area Chamber of Commerce is having their annual meeting. And Commander Shelby Nicotin, who is a Wakefield native, will be the guest of honor. She's a phenomenal person and has such a storied and distinguished military career. So I would encourage you to attend that meeting if you could. All right, with that, we'll move on to item 12, matters unanticipated. Do we have any before this body tonight? Seeing none, item number 13, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, understanding our next town council meeting will be on Monday, June 24th at 7 p.m., same time, same bat channel.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Chine, seconded by Councilor Butt. Any discussion? Seeing none, all right, all those in favor? All right. All right, and with that, I would just like to send our thanks to Madam Clerk Dalton. Thank you for being on, and thank you also to the best team in the business, those behind the camera at WCAT. With that, thank you for joining us tonight, Wakefield, and good night.